In this video, I'm going to talk about the top 10 RPG genres that I would like to see more of. Before we get started, a reminder that the links to the games that I make are below, as well as my Patreon page. And I want to give a few disclaimers for this video before I go through the top 10 list. My reading of the body of RPGs that exist is quite small, especially I'm sure compared to all of you. So please let me know if I've missed some RPGs that fall into these categories, and I will be sure to check them out when I have time. All right, my top 10 list of RPG genres that I want to see more of. Now, this actually starts with an honorable mention. I think maybe for a one-shot, I don't know about a real campaign, but I think there's stories to be told in this old school kind of subculture genre, you know, that skateboarding culture back when skateboarding was kind of taboo in a lot of places, the street dancing genre back when street dancing was kind of taboo in a lot of places. I think there's a lot of cool stories to be told there, and I'd be curious to see if there's any RPGs that dive into those types of stories. And while that is not my culture, I didn't come from that type of culture, it'd be interesting to like play and learn alongside with it. So that's kind of my honorable mention, is kind of that dancing, skateboarding subculture from 20, 30 years ago, I think would be interesting. So on to my top 10 list though, my number 10 is some sort of RPG around secret societies. I think this would be an incredible genre to explore more of. I'm not sure exactly what it would look like, but I think the idea of secret societies is completely underserved in RPGs, and I think oftentimes it only ends up as a plot device in modules and never as a mechanical functioning part of the rules within the role-playing game. But I think it'd be fun to go so far as to build the role-playing game around the idea of secret societies. You could go really big and have like Illuminati versus I don't know, somebody else versus the some other secret society for like global domination. I think that would be cool. Or just go local and say, okay, there's 2 or 3 secret societies in your own town. Who's going to come out in some sort of victory? Or maybe there's just one. Maybe it's like a secret society versus an environment thing, and they're trying to pull the strings to get certain events to go their way. So that's my number 10, secret societies. I think it's a cool idea, and I think there's a lot of mechanical and rule support that could be provided to make a very fun game around secret societies. Number 9 for me is kind of a boring topic to a lot of people in the board gaming world. It is often phrased as trading in the Mediterranean, but I think an RPG that is mostly focused on maritime trade would be very, very interesting. There are a lot of time periods where maritime trade, well, actually perpetually maritime trade has always been a key part of human civilization, but there's a lot of time periods where it got really big and really interesting at certain places in the world, like the Bronze Age in the Mediterranean. Actually playing an RPG where you are trading in the Mediterranean, I think would be very fun. Doing a maritime trading game all around the Silk Road in the Indian Ocean, I think would be extremely fun. And of course, during the Age of Sail, doing some sort of maritime trading game would be interesting there as well. I think the idea that it would be really episodic for the characters all to be aboard their own ship, or to have each character essentially be a ship. So the characters would all be participating as a fleet, and each character sheet is actually a ship and not a person. And of course, the statistics on the ship would be the people, the cargo, the things like that, the sailors. Then of course, that would kind of wrap up how the game plays. So I think a well-designed maritime trading game that could be played at different points around history would be very, very interesting as an RPG. So that is my number 9, maritime trading. Now my number 8 is also kind of about trade, and it's the idea of running a business empire during the Gilded Age. So this would be like the late 1800s, early 1900s in the United States at least. There's other economies that I'm less aware of around the world where this would also fit at different times. But the idea here is that there was a massive boom in railroads and oil production, in how newspapers were handled and that type of thing. And there's a lot of the steel industry. There's a lot of industries that just exploded. And there was a lot of legislation that was added to the books, like anti-monopoly style and anti-competitive style legislation to stop businesses from creating uneven playing fields. And so I think it'd be really interesting to dive into this world of business empire building while also, comparing it with business ethics and kind of exploring the morality of a truly free market enterprise versus one that is reined in by politics. For me, that would be very interesting. I know for a lot of people, they wouldn't want to touch it, but for me, I think that would be incredibly interesting. So that's my number 8, a Gilded Age, businessy, ethic-y style role-playing game. Now, my number 7 is one, excuse me, is one that I'm pretty sure there's a lot of games out there about. I just haven't played any role-playing games around this genre, so please tell me your favorites. But I would like to see more, or at least play in a mystery genre role-playing game. Again, I know there are mystery genre games out there. My favorite board game currently is Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective, which plays like a role-playing game, but it's a board game. The idea is that you are presented with prompts that tell you a mystery in Sherlock Holmes period London, and then you have a map and a directory and basically a storybook. And you use the map, use the directory, find the address of the person that you want to go talk to, and then in the storybook you open up to that address and then read what conversation you have with that particular person is. And then by the end of the game, you got to get a certain number of questions right, and your score is based off of how many questions you have right and how few people you have visited. And so it's very fun. I have a group of friends that I play. We've been playing for years and years and years. We get a few done a year, and it's a very fun game. But I'd like to see that continued, I guess, and expanded in role-playing game format. And again, I'm aware that there are mystery-style role-playing games out there. Just tell me your favorite so I can sit down and play one. I think it would be very fun. And that's my number 7. Even though it probably doesn't deserve to be on this list, a mystery style genre RPG. All right, my number 6 is it's a rule set that is included in a lot of role-playing games, but it's not the core focus of most role-playing games. And this is the idea of base building or of tower defense. I think it would be incredibly fun to have a role-playing game where the core mechanics are all about building up your base, building up a castle, building up, a wall on the edge of the uncivilized wilderness. And basically your character is somewhat in charge, but also able to go do quests to get things to bring it back, or to further build up that base or that wall. And those quests could involve going out into the uncivilized wilderness, either winning battles or finding resources or finding old items to bring back and make your home base better, or going on the other side, going back into the civilization and convincing monarchs and queens and kings that, hey, you know what, we need more resources to hold back civilization or this or that. I think there's a lot of other genres. This could work in fantasy and sci-fi and a post-apocalyptic style. This could work in a lot of time periods. Most of the base building that I've encountered in RPGs is focused, it's not focused on base building. The game is focused on combat or something like that, and base building is a part of it, but I'd like to flip that around. I'd like base building to be at the center of the gameplay, and there would be a bunch of mechanics that support making sure your base is well positioned, well fortified for large scale combat, and then there's these other small things that you can do, other small actions, other small quests that your character can go on to try and refortify and build up and level up your base. I think that would be incredibly cool. So that is my number 6, is tower defense or base building. Excuse me. Number 5 is a space opera episodic style game. Now, a space opera, there's a lot of definitions. In my mind, I would like one that has a lot of character drama. So there's a lot of interconnected drama between the characters, and then a lot of exotic settings. And the idea in this type of game is that the spaceship that all of these characters are sharing, which leads to a lot of the drama, visits these really exotic settings. But the exotic settings, what happens there and what the characters see and experience, feeds back into their relationship drama and lets them learn more about themselves. And so one of the common ones, I think, in some of the stories told, is one of sexual tension. Maybe there's a lot of sexual tension between two characters and they don't want to address it, but they go to a civilization where the idea of sex is less taboo than one we have here in, our time and space. And so all of a sudden the characters are forced to interact through this lens, that they've ignored in their relationship up until now. And, obviously sexual tension isn't the only thing that works for. That works in a lot of different ways. But I think there would be a way to build a really, really neat space opera game where you have all these different relationship dynamics and a lot of different emotions between characters that then have to be analyzed and interacted through in these exotic environments. And I don't know how it would be done, but I think that would be incredibly cool to kind of hit it on both ends. You're going to see the relationship drama on the ship before the episode, then one aspect of that relationship will be explored in the episode, and then you'll see the result of that back on the ship at the end of the episode. I think that would be a very fun game to play. So space opera is my 5th favorite RPG genre that I would want to see more of. My 4th favorite, I wrote 3 on my sheet twice, sorry. My 4th favorite would be one of scientific expedition. Think about Journey to the Center of the Earth. Think about Darwin's expeditions to the Galapagos Islands. I think that I talked in my last video about exploration. I think an exploration-focused RPG, but one where scientific discovery is the core mechanic, or at least at the core sensibility of the gameplay, would be very, very fun. And there's a lot of genres, again, this could fit in. It could be like this pulp adventure style, Journey to the Center of the Earth. It could be more historical or more scientific. But the idea, I think, in my mind, would be that you're doing actual sketches of descriptions, or maybe you're making up new names for things you see, or you're trying to track or hunt or observe animals, or trying to collect plants. I think there's a whole bunch of mechanics that can be built into a system like this that is focused around a scientific expedition. I just haven't seen one done yet. I've seen a lot of board games do this before, but I've never seen a role-playing game that actually dives in head first into scientific expedition. And I think a full RPG around this will be very fun to explore. So that is my number 4, scientific expedition. My number 3 is one that I know has been tried, but there's some problems with it. And my number 3 is sports. I want to see more sports RPGs. Now, the problem with sports RPGs is that they work best with one dungeon master, one game master, and one player. Because at the center of any sports story is the player. All right, you can make an argument that at the center of any sports story is the team and the characters on the team. And I think there could be an RPG that does like a Friday Night Lights style story where, you have all these players of different backgrounds, and there's, racial tension and cultural tension on the team, and you have to overcome that to win the big game, yada, yada, yada. And as fun as that story can be, I think what I'm looking for is something a little different. I'm looking for a sports RPG that has more of a broader appeal, but again, when you look at more broader appeal, oftentimes it focuses on one player, and a lot of players who play sports RPGs want to be the superstar. Consider the superstar quarterback, the superstar basketball player, the superstar soccer player. And so it would be challenging, I think, to set up an RPG, a sports RPG that allows for multiple players to be the superstar, where, one player isn't always taking the stage from another one. However, after thinking about it more, I think there are some sports where it works well. I think bicycle racing works well. I think any race sport works really well, because the players are all the star of their own story, but they're all competing on a level playing field against one another, where they're not really relying on external teams as either baggage or uplifting them in the competition. And so the one that came to mind that maybe would work the best right now is F1. I think F1 is gaining in popularity, at least in the United States, F1 racing. And I think that that would be an interesting avenue to explore in a sports RPG, because there's still the lead rider and the drama and the character development. You do have a team, but it's, it's obviously an important part of that sport as much as I know about it, which is very little. But it's not as important maybe as like a basketball team or a soccer team or a American football team. And so I think some sort of racing sport where the character obviously has the competition of the sport that they're exploring, but also maybe the monetary side of things, the popularity side of things, and the management even possibility side of things, depending on the type of sport it is. I think that would be very, very cool to potentially get into. I know that, again, there's been sport RPGs in the past, and there's ones that exist out there. They just run into some challenges when it gets into group play, I think, when you look at it design-wise, and I think that can be fixed if you set it up smartly with the type of sport you're playing. So that's my number 3, is a sport RPG. Now my number 2, And this is a big jump from number 3 to number 2, by the way. My number 2 is what I would call scientific optimism. This is your Andy Weir novels. Other people call this like science competence porn. I'm not a huge fan of that particular phrase. I prefer scientific optimism, but the idea that you have an astronaut or some sort of scientist who's out in a dangerous place and things start to go wrong, and the only thing that they have to rely on is a lot of resources, but also their scientific knowledge. And I have no idea how you would build an RPG like this, but there are so many cool moments in Andy Weir's books, like the Hail Mary Project and oh my gosh, The Martian, I almost forgot the title, The Martian, where the protagonist is facing imminent death because something went wrong in the location they're at, given the environment they're in, and they have to use science to solve the problem. And I think that would be an incredibly cool RPG to create. Some way where you have X, Y, and Z resources, but you know your character has the ability to turn Y and Z, combine them and turn it into resource A, and then another character can take resource A and split it into resource B and B, and then another character can take resource B and B and combine it with X and B and make resource C to solve the problem. You know, something like that would be very, very fun, I think, but wow, it seems like a really complex idea to all pull together. I just think that would be an incredible experience. So that is my number 2, and again, it's a big jump from number 3, is scientific optimism, some sort of RPG where you can science the crap out of a situation and figure out how to solve it. All right, so my number 1 RPG that I would like to see more genres of is what I call spell-slinging problem solving. All right, this idea comes from most modernish, like urban fantasy novels or young adult fantasy novels. You see this a lot in Harry Potter. You see this a lot in like the Dresden Files, and of course a lot of other of the same type of genre, where sure, the main character does have power, like Harry Potter is a powerful wizard, Harry Dresden is a powerful wizard, but half the time they're not solving problems with their power, they're thinking about how to solve the problem, and they might use magic in a small way, but they use their problem solving in a big way, and they use magic in an odd way to solve the problem rather than just throwing a fireball at something or, you know, being special in a situation and solving the problem. And I don't know exactly how you would design an RPG around this, but I would love an RPG where when you sit down to play, your character has a bunch of utility spells, and none of the spells are combat related, and none of the spells are powerful. But what you have to do when you come into these challenging situations is you have to sit down with your character, you have to pay attention to your surroundings, you have to identify what's going on, you have to identify what spells are at your disposal, and then you have to use actual problem solving with your spells and the environment to solve the problem. You can't just rely on throwing a fireball every single time at your enemy or casting magic missile. You have to actually think about what's around you and think about how to solve the problem. I think that would be a very, very fun game to play. That's my number 1 on the list, kind of. And again, I think it'd be hard to design, but that would be the pinnacle of RPG for me, is being able to use magic, not just to blow my enemy away, but to cleverly solve a problem. Now, these are my top 10 plus 1 honorable mention for now. Looking at the list, I have kind of at that top end, a lot of like trade and businessy things. In the middle, it's kind of a mishmash of like mystery, tower defense, space opera, and scientific expedition and sports. And then at the top end of the range here with the 2 and the 1, it's problem solving. And I think that's kind of telling for me, at least. One of my favorite things in RPGs is either as a player character solving problems, but also as a dungeon master, as somebody who runs games, is watching characters solve problems that I give to them, especially when you consider that combat's an option, but they go outside of combat or they do something unique or interesting in combat to solve the problem. So that's just one reflection I have on this list, I guess. But I'll go over the top 10 list right now just to get everyone on the same page here. So number 10 was Secret Societies. Number 9 was Maritime Trade. Number 8 was like a Gilded Age business and ethics style thing. Number 7 was Mystery. Again, I know there's games out there for mystery. Number 6 is Tower Defense and Base Building. Number 5, Sci-Fi Space Opera. Number 4, Scientific Expedition. Number 3, Sports. Number 2, Scientific Optimism. And number 1, Spellslinging Problem Solving. So those are the top 10 RPGs that I want more of. I will add one more thing, that these are actually not my top 10, these are my top 11. My number 1 is actually a pure exploration game. I talked about this last week. If you missed that video, go check it out. That's my true number 1, but since I spent a whole video talking about it, I didn't really want to put it on my list this week. But if you're interested in exploring what an actual game completely focused around exploration would look like, go ahead and check out that video. Thank you so much for listening. Again, I have some links below if you're interested in games that I design on my Patreon page. Check those out. Otherwise, I will see you in the next video.